Hey, David, how's it going?
Hey, good. Thanks. How you doing, man?
Good. We just finished an awesome episode, and I'm still like my head's still spinning from it. It was great.
Yeah. It's probably going to be one of our longer episodes because it followed the story of a pharmacist that went from getting debt free and buying his first house to then growing to 90 units and 8 figures of debt in just 5 years. Just rapid fire growth that was really impressive to see.
Yeah, it was such an incredible story. So we got a great email from Stephen Nguyen, pharmacist and pharmacy director from California, graduated back in 2013, had kind of the same story as everybody else, right? Tons of debt to deal with. How do you deal with that? And again, just I don't want to ruin the story, but it's just incredible to see how he's transpired from being so far in debt to being even farther in debt, but what that's actually meant for his financial growth and what he's been able to accomplish. It's incredible.
Yeah, and I think when you see the kind of the pace of that story as it plays out over 40 minutes or so, it's certainly impressive to see also just how organic and natural that growth was, which I
Mm.
think is just super fun about real estate investing. Like there's certainly the flavor of real estate investing that's buying that vacation house that you and your family can enjoy and you rent it out some of the weeks that you're not there. And if that's the entirety of your real estate investing, if that's your plan, that's a wonderful thing. On the other end of that spectrum is what Steven did, just this really fast growth to 90 units, 5 years with no signs of slowing down from here. So real estate investing can have all kinds of different angles to that journey.
Yeah. So this is one you're going to want to listen to and share with your friends. Listen all the way through. There's some rapid fire wisdom throughout, and it's even again all the way to the last few minutes. So it's a really great episode. I don't want to delay it any longer, and I'll take you right to it now. Hope you guys enjoy. Hey, Steven, welcome to the show.
Hey, excited to be on the show, guys.
Yeah, we're really pumped that you reached out to share some of your real estate journey, your pharmacy story, and I want to get right into it. There's a lot to cover, so maybe let's start off with just a little bit about your pharmacy background, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, so at a high level, I graduated from pharmacy school in California back in 2013, so approaching that 10-year mark, um, which is interesting. Time definitely flies. But honestly, like every pharmacist that graduates, I graduated with $250,000 of student debt back in 2013, and you make a six-figure salary starting off. Right? So immediately I just said, wow, I need to learn how to manage my money because I was never taught in school. I don't think anyone was taught about finances in school. But also, my family didn't really teach me really
Mhm.
either. So, I kind of felt like I need to kind of take it upon myself. But just like everyone else graduating, you're so focused on paying that student debt. So, honestly, for the first 4 years, I just lived very humbly. I still had the college mentality. I was fortunate enough to still live at home, so I can save on the rent. And I just took all the excess money, lived as if I was a college student, and just pumped it into my student loans. So I just did that organically over 4 years, and was able to pay off $250,000 of student debt. I was able to refinance it at a lower interest rate. So I think the federal rate was like 8% during my time, but I
Mhm.
was able to lower that to about 4%. So just doing that saved me so much money and time, combined with just living very humbly and frugally, despite making that pharmacist salary. So I basically just, that was my goal, was just to pay off my debt. And that's all I knew, to be honest. That's all my parents taught me, is that no debt is good. So pay it off.
I gotta hit pause for a second because that like $250,000 in 4 years. That's congrats. That's huge. There are a ton of pharmacists out there that are hoping to do anything even remotely close to that, and you've killed it. That's an awesome setup. So congrats on that. That's huge.
Yeah. Like I said, you just kind of put your head down, take one step at a time. Just work. I didn't do any overtime or anything like that. I didn't work two, three jobs. It was just one job,
Yeah.
and just organically, you'll be surprised how it compounds
Wow.
over 4 years.
Wow.
Now, I love that combination of self-control and strategy there that comes in. So you're not just reducing your spending and the self-control piece there, but then also the intentional strategy of the refi. I feel like those themes have to come into play because at that 4 year mark, so now 4 years out of school, you're thinking, what's next? I've paid off this debt. I now have this money that's coming in. I don't have all these payments. What's then the strategy and the self-control of your next financial moves? Because it sounds like real estate.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. So after I've paid off $250,000 of student debt, and I kind of forgot to mention that during that 4 years, I was kind of job hopping and
Hmm.
choosing higher paying jobs. So I kind of naturally did that. Just because like you spend the same amount of hours, you might as well try to maximize how much you're getting paid.
Sure.
But yeah, I was like I said, I was living at home, and what's the next step after you pay off your student loans is I want to save up for a down payment to live in a
Hmm.
house, right? And it's just a very natural progression. So once again, just saved up money, lived humbly for a year, and I bought my first property, which was a 4 bedroom, 3 bath, single family home in the Bay Area. It was $800,000. So I just down 10% with a conventional loan. Fortunately, I didn't have to pay PMI, despite downing less than 20%, and basically was able to get the property. I house hacked. So I know you guys discussed that topic in another video podcast episode,
Yeah.
but basically I lived in the master bedroom, and it was a 4 bedroom. So I rented out the 3 other bedrooms for $1,000 each, all utilities included.
Wow.
So I literally just posted it on a Facebook Marketplace, which is kind of the new Craigslist, and just said, "Hey, fully furnished, all utilities included, internet, month to month. If you want to rent it, just reach out to me." And then was quickly able to fill it up and got $3,000 a month in just rent, and that covered my mortgage. So I was only responsible for, the property tax, the utilities, insurance, which came out to be around 1,500 a month. So that's pretty cheap for the Bay Area. I mean, that may sound cheap in other states, but in Bay Area, 1,500 a month to live is like pennies.
Yeah. Especially for a nice single family place, something that, you can call your own home too. That's huge. I mean, I know my brother lives out in San Francisco and it was like $4,000 a month for the average apartment or something like that. I mean, so yeah, you're really knocking some dollars off that. That's incredible.
Yeah. So by also doing that too, I still have the same mentality, right? Like I
Hmm.
just kind of saved up, and at that point, actually, that's when I got my first director position. So it took me about about 4.5 years before I progressed up from a pharmacist to become a pharmacy director, and then I did have to relocate to San Francisco, and same thing, right? I saved up money because I was getting rent, and I downed 10% again for
Hmm.
another single family home. It was $1.1 million in San Francisco. And this property was kind of a makeshift duplex. In San Francisco, it's kind of common where it's tri level.
Mhm.
And on the first floor, or the first, second, and third floor was 3 bedroom, two bath. That's where I lived. So I lived in the master bedroom, rent out the 2 bedrooms in that unit. And the lower unit was a 2 bedroom, 1 bath, which I rented out to 4 college students. And they had separate entrances and everything. So I
Wow.
had privacy, right? We had privacy. And once again, like I think my payment was like around $1,500 again to live in San Francisco. And as you alluded to, most recently it's about 4,500 actually.
There you go.
If you lived in like downtown San Francisco. So, once again, I just got a job so I could, after about a year and a half of saving up, I down 10%, no PMI, and I just rented out my last house
That's awesome.
that I was previously living in. So it was just a very, very natural progression. And that's when it kind of clicked for me like, hey, can I just do this every year for 10 years? That was my initial goal. But then you kind of quickly hit a ceiling in single family homes,
Mm.
where in California, it's more appreciation. You don't really get much cash flow. Like, I'll be honest, my first home that I rented out, I was negative about $400 a month.
Oh wow.
Like, and I was self managing that myself too. And that's not including like any maintenance,
Mhm.
right? So you're just straight up 400 negative a month.
Wow.
But because I was still working my W 2, pretty high income W 2, I could take that hit. And that property was appreciating, about $100,000 a year since I basically bought it. So I mean, I'll take the hit, right? Like for
Yeah.
that for that appreciation. So, but obviously, you can't own like 10 properties where you're negative $400. At that point, you're stuck to your job. So
Yeah.
that's when I kind of paused again and said, this is not sustainable. This is not scalable. Like, what's next?
Mm.
And, for me, I started watching a lot of podcasts, a lot of YouTube videos. That's what's great about the modern day. And, I
Mhm.
stumbled across Bigger Pockets, and, they do a lot of real estate stuff. And it just kind of got me open to the concept of remote investing out of state.
Mm.
So that's when I really pivoted.
So before we jump to that pivot to out of state investing, because I think that that's a big shift. I think that there's a preparatory step in there that I think a lot of folks are sitting on right now of
Yeah.
they're looking at that move that, to a bigger house, to a different area, some sort of move. And they're trying to figure out, what do I do with the existing house that I'm in? You made the conscious decision to keep the prior house as a rental. Um, and you made the conscious decision to do it, even though it was losing money. I think a lot of people have this belief that the only way that I'm going to be a successful investor is if it creates cash flow. So what was it that made you think that, you know what, I'm going to keep it despite the negative cash flow, and I'm a believer in this as a good investment still?
Yeah, so this is the greatest debate in single family homes is cash flow versus appreciation.
Mhm.
So obviously California is purely appreciation versus where I own apartments in Oklahoma, it's mostly cash flow, right? But then, while $800 a month in cash flow sounds very appealing and appetizing, but if you have one roof goes out, you basically just got wiped out that whole
Mhm.
cash flow for a year
Yeah.
easily, right? Versus appreciation, that's the one where it silently grows without you even noticing it, and that's where it's life changing, right? Because as I mentioned, you kind of fast forward till today, that property that I bought for 800,000 is worth $1.3 million now. That's $500,000 in appreciation, and I literally did nothing. Right, I literally just rented it out. It's the same tenant that's been living there the entire time because we have high, income tenants, and you have to think long term in real estate. Like if you hold real estate with a 10 to 30-year mindset, for me, I never want to sell real estate ideally because you'll
Mhm.
never lose, right?
Yeah.
Like my parents, they bought homes in California. The house I grew up in, they bought it for $600,000 in 2004. And today it's worth $2.1 million. So I mean, if you have that long-term outlook, you can't lose,
Yeah.
right? You can't lose. And my interest rate on the property is 3.7%. That's less than inflation.
Mm.
So, if my income goes up organically, rents goes up organically, and your property goes up organically, like you can't lose. So for me, I saw it as an investment long term, and you just want that equity because I made enough money through my W-2 job that I don't hate my W-2 job, right? I don't mind working it, and a $400 hit isn't that bad when a lot of people are paying rent.
Yeah.
Like a lot of pharmacists, I hate to say it, they live a very fancy lifestyle, nice apartment, new car, brand new Tesla, everything, right? The whole works. A lot more lavish than me, I'll be honest, and I'm a pharmacy director and I own 90 units, and I'm still able to stay humble.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of my mindset was just to kind of live humbly, live beneath your means and think long term. And, I'm now seeing the fruits of that compound effects 5 years later.
I just did the math for you for those playing at home. $500,000 over 5 years, so 60 months. That's $8,333 in cash flow every single month. So, if you want to break it down that way, right? Like if you're trying to compete with the cash flow play, so that shows you the power when you've got a market like California where the appreciation is just so far removed from one everywhere else, but two from that cash flow perspective. You can't compare the two anymore. So that gives you some idea.
Yeah, so like you said, I think anyone would take negative $400 a month to make $180,000, which is essentially
Exactly.
pharmacist's salary
Yeah.
in California, and it's tax free. And
Yeah.
like I said, like I think anyone would take that gamble,
Yeah.
right? You can ask anyone; they would take that gamble in a heartbeat.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
So you're then hitting on the different values that real estate investing can bring. So the appreciation is the one piece. There's the mortgage pay down, the fact that as a bonus to all of this, those tenants through their rent are paying down your mortgage.
Yes.
There's the tax benefits, and then there's also the cash flow, which is what pivoted you to Oklahoma. So it's kind of wild to think that you saw this $500,000 increase, and then you did more of that and more of that. That sounds really good. Why would you look away from that $500,000 increase and look to another market? What made Oklahoma or some of this distance investing feel like a win?
Yeah, so once I kind of learned about how commercial loans work versus conventional single family homes loans work. So the example I like to give is if you have two single family homes right next to each other and one rents for 5,000 a month and the other one rents for $10,000 a month, when you go to sell it, they sell for the same exact price because it's based on the sales comps.
Mm-hmm.
But with an apartment complex, if you had the same example, let's say you have a 20 unit apartment complex that rents 5,000 a month and the other 20 unit apartment complex rents for $10,000 a month, the one that rents for $10,000 a month is worth double. So, and the reason for that is the value is based on the net operating income divided by the market cap rate. So the
Mm-hmm.
net operating income is the income minus the expense. So you can control the income, right, by raising the rents. You can control the expense by, maybe doing some water conservation, for example. And the market cap rate is determined by the market, right? So Oklahoma, it's about 7, 8 cap. California is probably like a 2, 3 cap. So once I learned that concept, it completely blew my mind, and it just made me realize I don't want to buy single family homes again, because as you increase your cash flow, you actually increase the value.
Mm-hmm.
So you have it's like having your cake and eating it too, right? Like before with single family homes, it's either appreciation or cash flow. But with apartments, if I have more cash flow, it forces appreciation, and you have both. So once I learned that concept, it just completely blew my mind. And I just said, I need to get started in this in a low risk way. Because, we're pharmacists, right? We're very risk averse. Let's be honest here. That's why we're all in the profession. Um, and I just said, well, in Oklahoma, I can get a 26 unit apartment complex for $500,000. That's cheaper than all my single family homes in California by half.
Yeah.
So if I need to use this opportunity to learn about apartment complexes, because once again, right, very conservative. You want to test the concept before fully committing to it, right? It's just kind of like doing a residency in pharmacy school to see if you want to do inpatient pharmacy, right? You do the residency, you either like it or you hate it, right? That's the same with apartments. So I thought it was a very low risk way to get into apartment complexes. So what I kind of learned was when you first dive into apartment complexes, number one, it's intimidating, right? Like a lot of people tell me, Steven, I own single family homes just like you, and I'm too intimidated to jump into apartment complexes. Only rich people own apartment complexes. And to be honest, that's what I believed too, until I got my own. But pretty much when I go into the game, a lot of brokers will not take you seriously at all.
Mm.
If you have no track record, you don't own any apartment complexes, even if you own 10 single family homes, they don't care. You own no apartment complexes, so they will not take you seriously. So instead of complaining and crying and giving up, I just said, let me find off market deals.
Mm.
So I started sending out letters. I sent out letters to property owners using PropStream
Mm-hmm.
to kind of dive into the weeds there a little bit. And I just would write letters. I'd use my doctor title. I'd flex on that a little bit. We're all doctors here. So I'd say I'm Dr. Stephen Nguyen to build that trust and credibility. And, I just sent out about 1,800 letters over 6 months. And, one owner called me back and he wanted to sell his apartment complex for $500,000, 26 units. And, I just kind of underwrote the deal and, made it work. Made an offer, did all the due diligence, and I've owned it for about a year and a half now. And what's kind of crazy is I bought it for $500,000. I got $60,000 in seller repair credit
Wow.
after due diligence and inspections. So my down payment was effectively 10%. And then also the property appraised for $750,000 day one. So I made $250,000 of equity day one by going off market.
That's
So
crazy.
that just completely blew my mind, right? So that's why I pivoted, right? Is because I learned that you can make just as much in apartment complexes as single families. So that's why I was able to leave my comfort zone of single family homes in California to take that calculated risk very methodically to do that. Because worst case, if I mess up, I can sell this and still make $250,000. That's still decent, right? But my prediction after I'm done with renovations, So the rents of the property were around 350. I think I can double the rents
Wow.
after about $8,000 of renovation per unit. And the rent I rented out for $700 just recently. I finished renovating about maybe 7 units, and I'm hitting $700 in rents. So I just doubled my rent. So what does that mean? I doubled the value of my apartment complex. So it appraised at 750. It's gonna be worth around 1.5 million. So it's about $1 million of equity, right?
Yeah.
So I can't do that in California. So I mean, it's like I said, once I learned that concept and that mindset shift, it just completely shifted my mind. And I just said, I love my California portfolio, but once I learned this concept, I could just not go back. I have to do this. It's too great to not do.
I really appreciate you going through those numbers, Stephen, because I think that really gives perspective on what people are talking about and what you've been able to accomplish. Because again, you talk up front about this $800,000 place. It was $80,000 down at 10%. Everyone assumes that's low risk, right? People are doing that every single day of the week, doing that, right? And you bought an apartment complex with 26 units for $50,000 down, right? Like less than
Yeah.
that. But every single person you talk to is telling you how much riskier it was to do that, but it cost you $30,000 less. It's like just looking at the down payment, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's super, super important to see those numbers, actually flesh that out, and have conversations with people that are doing this before you make a judgment call about, well, this is riskier than that because I don't know anything about it, right? Doesn't mean it's riskier, it just means you aren't knowledgeable yet. So I again really, really appreciate that perspective. It's really cool.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you said that is because, people, like for me, I'm the type that I don't know until I've done it myself. So
Sure.
I'm always the type to like you said, dip your toes before diving in. I'm sure most pharmacists can relate to that
Yeah.
mindset. And like I said, like to me, I actually think it's riskier to own single family homes because if your single family home is vacant, you're 100% vacant.
Yeah.
In my 26 unit, I can have 5 tenants not pay me, but I have 21 other tenants paying me.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I think it's riskier to not have a single family, or if you're doing fix and flip with single family homes, right? If you're fixing and flipping it, you're getting zero income because you're renovating it, right? But in my apartment complex, I'm still getting paid by 20 other tenants as I'm renovating 5 other units.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, once I finish renting those 5, I rent it out. And then at that point, tenants kind of know that you're probably going to raise the rent, so they might leave organically, or you can just move out tenants that are not your desirable tenant base and then renovate their unit and then rent that out. So that's what I really like about it. It's actually lower risk, and banks actually love apartment complexes more because it's income producing. It's an income producing asset. With single family homes, they look at your debt to income ratio, right? And
Yeah.
that's based on your income. And we're pharmacists, so we make good money. But eventually, if you own like 10 single family homes in California, my debt to income ratio is gonna be so terrible because my rents are negative, right? Essentially, I'm negative. So, but with commercial lending, they look at the property. So the fact that my property cash flowed so well, the metric is called debt service coverage ratio. It has to be greater than 1.25. If you hit that, they don't care that I have no experience at
Mm.
that point. They didn't care that I had zero apartment complex experience. They just saw the deal, how amazing it was. And like I said, I appraised $250,000 day one above what I purchased at.
I was going to ask that. Is that how you got over that hump of I don't have the experience, so I can't get in the game? But because you brought them such a fantastic deal, once they assessed it as well, they said, "Oh yeah, we can handle this." All of a sudden, is that where that shift occurred?
Yeah, like I just said, like once you have the good deal, the money will come.
Yeah.
They don't care about your experience, right? So that was my hurdle that I had to jump over. So
But
that was
like
a
I
little
have,
hack that I did.
but like I have to know, like as you're sending these letters out, Steven, like I'm just picturing this moment. You're sending these letters. You have nobody telling you they're going to give you financing, but you're sending notes to apartment complexes like, "Hey, I'll buy your place."
Yeah. So my letter. So I'm very strategic in how I do my letters.
Sure.
It's almost like an invitation card, like a thank you card. So it kind of creates that intrigue and mystique. But in the letter, I just come off like a regular Joe,
I
right?
love
Like,
it.
hey, I'm Steven. I'm a pharmacist. I own 5 rental properties. I'm just trying to build a portfolio, take care of my family. If you have kids, obviously you want to list your kids. Like I have a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old. And then I just said, I'm pre-qualified with a lender, and I'm interested in buying your property. And then just give me a call, text me, and that's how it all starts. So usually you just
Cool.
send out your letters, and then I send out 300 letters a month, so about maybe 10 will call me, right? We're detail oriented here. So about 10, 3% will call
Mhm.
me. So about 10. And then out of the 10, maybe one might be serious
Mm.
about wanting to sell. So it's just building that trust, building that rapport. So we're pharmacists, right? We're pharmacists. We consult patients. We're the most number one trustworthy profession in healthcare. So it's a very natural ability that we have, right? To build that trust. And, we're doctors too. So like it takes down their guard. Like I'm not just some random guy from California. I'm a pharmacist.
Yeah, I
And I
love that.
use that title and I leverage that to my advantage. So, it's not a crutch. It's actually an advantage sometimes if you shift your mindset a little bit. So um, that's what helped me be successful. That's how I scaled to basically my 90 unit portfolio was all off market with mailing.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah, I want to talk about that growth then as well, because one of the things that I think is different about commercial is as you increase that value, right, that allows you to complete a cash out refinance where the bank sees, okay, now this is worth more, and they let you borrow that money back out of it. And so I'm wondering, is that the strategy that you then bought the next commercial building, or how did you expand from there?
Yeah, yeah. So, fortunately for me, I actually just cashed out refi some of my single family homes, which had built up a lot of equity in it. And I was
Mhm.
able to actually pull out a HELOC back when they allowed it on investment property. So I locked it in
Mhm.
before they removed that product. So that's what really helped me leverage a little bit. My apartment complexes are not quite there yet because I'm still renovating it, but my goal is to do cash out refi. So like just doing some numbers there. So at a high level, I bought it for 500,000. I'm putting in about $200,000 to renovate it. So I'm all in about $700,000. I think it's be worth about $1.5 million. And you do a cash out refi, you basically pull out your down payment, you pull out all your renovation costs and maybe a little bit extra, right? And that's considered pretty successful. And then you pull all that money tax free, and then you can go buy another apartment complex.
Yeah.
So for me, I was able to leverage my single family homes with cash out refis and HELOCs. And actually, there's some lenders that they'll do a personal line of credit. So the bank that I refinanced my pharmacy school debt with, First Republic Bank, they actually have a personal line of credit for $100,000 unsecured, and
Wow.
it's pretty low interest rates as well. I think mine was like 3%. Um, so you can borrow that to leverage to buy more real estate, right? So you have to
Mhm.
be comfortable with a little bit of debt, right? And leveraging, but that's the growth phase, right? Like I'm still growing, so you want to leverage, but then once you've hit your financial independence number, whatever that is, at that point you can kind of slow down and you don't have to maybe pull out as much cash as you needed to. So that's what really helped me scale was just leveraging my assets. So, quickly, once you close on your first apartment complex, what does that mean? You now have experience, right? You have a track
Mhm.
record, and now
Mhm.
lenders know you, and now you know the market, and you have a property manager, you have your system built in place, right? So this is starting to sound like a little pharmacy now, right? I built my pharmacy from the ground up. I have a
Mhm.
system in place. It's self-sufficient, and now it's easier for me to buy more apartment complexes,
Yeah.
right? Because I know the area, I know Oklahoma. I know a one bedroom rents for 650, a two bedroom rents for 750. The average price per unit in an apartment complex is $50,000 per unit renovated. I know that out the gate, right?
Mhm.
And I only did that because I own property there and I've been analyzing deals there. It's like repetitions, right? It's like going
Sure.
through farm
Mhm.
school. It took us 4 years, right, to do this. And I've been working as a pharmacist for 9 years now. So at this point, it's like autopilot. But then with real estate, you have to go through that learning curve of real estate and single family and with multifamily. So that's what I did, and that's how I was basically able to kind of organically scale up. Right, that's how I went from one apartment complex to a second apartment complex, and then I slightly deviated a bit, and I got a mobile home park
Oh,
thrown
geez.
into the mix there. But like I said, once you kind of understand the basic concepts of commercial real estate, if you increase the NOI, you force the appreciation. It gives me more control, right? I'm a pharmacist. I'm a control freak,
Mm.
right? Right now, appreciation is not under my control. It's just whatever the market dictates.
Yeah.
But can increasing rents and decreasing expenses, that's fully under my control, right? And that's what makes it very powerful for me. And it kind of ties in naturally with me as a pharmacist, right? We like control because we have to be accurate. So I
Mhm.
feel like I just had more control with apartment complexes than with single family home.
I love that. And something you said that I think is really key, and I want to go back for just a second, is that you have to be comfortable with a little bit of debt. one of the first things we talked about was getting out of debt, right? You got out of school, $250,000 in loans, got to get away from that, got to get away from that. You now have way more than $250,000 in debt, right? Like, do you ever wake up and be like, what am I doing? Am I allowed to do all this? Like, I don't know. I just think it's an interesting concept, right? We all panic about debt, but what you're establishing is good debt. And I
Yes.
think that's, even though we look at that as good debt, the three of us sitting on this call, right, know that, but a lot of people look at that as scary because it's the D word, right? It is debt. Does that ever bother you, or you just know it comes to the territory?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Like a lot of us grew up where debt is has a negative tone, right?
Absolutely.
Like a lot, credit card debt, car loans, student loans,
Yeah,
that hits home for all of us.
sure.
But what's crazy was like student loans was 8% interest, and there's like I think the tax write off was like 2,500 at the time.
Hmm.
But with real estate, it was like 4%. I was like, how is it cheaper to get a home mortgage? It's like half my rate. Like, do you not want working professionals
It's
to take
crazy.
care of patients? That was my joke at the time. But, you know, with debt, like you said, it is leverage. Like to buy $1 million piece of real estate, I can put 10% down, which is $100,000. But if you put that into like stocks, if you have $100,000, you only get $100,000 worth of stocks. So you can't leverage up. But then also, kind of back to your point of debt, when you get into apartment complexes, there's something called non recourse debt. So, non recourse debt means that you're not personally liable for it. So what does that mean in simple terms? If I go bankrupt, the bank would just take back the property. They can't come after me personally and my
Mm,
other assets.
great.
With a single family home, which is typically recourse debt, if I go bankrupt on that property, they're going to come after my other assets. So to me, even though I do have a lot of debt, I want to convert a lot of my debt over to non-recourse debt. And usually you can do that by paying a higher interest rate. So let's say the
Mm,
typical interest rate is 6%. For recourse debt, you might maybe pay like 7.5 to 8 for non-recourse debt. But is that 2% bump worth that peace of mind of not personally being guaranteed for it? I'd say so.
yeah.
Right. So it just really, that's why I said it's really the mindset shift. And yeah, sometimes I do wake up. I'm about $12 million in debt. I'll be honest.
Wow.
Um, but like I said, in the accumulation phase, when I'm trying to hit financial independence, so I have the option to leave my day job. That's my end goal. Unless I can get a remote job, that might extend my life a little bit longer. But being in the basement of a hospital for 10 years, it wears you down after a while. I could use a little sunlight periodically. So but once I hit that number where I can leave my job, at that point, you can reevaluate. Like, do I want it leverage, or maybe I can just start doing larger down payments? Maybe I
Mhm.
can not cash out refi my properties and collect that cash flow. So really, it's all in your control, right? So I'm in the accumulation phase, but later you might just want to cruise. Like if I have a family and kids, I don't want to leverage as much. I don't want that stress. So it's just options, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what's beautiful about real estate is it just gives you options, and that's
Awesome.
why I do it. That's why everyone does real estate. It's just to have options and flexibility down the road. So it's just a matter of how you want to play the game, and how you play the game always varies depending on which stage of your life. Just like in pharmacy, in the first 5 years, I'll be honest, you're very gun ho. You want to learn, do everything, and then once you've been in it 10 years or 20 years, you just kind of want to do the bare minimum and get that raise like everyone else.
Well, I love the kind of why and the vision that you've set for what real estate can do, and the cash flow and the financial independence, and a lot of those things that I think people are after in their financial journey. One of the things that you talked about too a few minutes ago was the learning curve to get there, because I think that in 30 minutes you've distilled 5+ years of hard learning, right? And so I think that there's some people that heard a lot of terms like non-recourse debt and DSCR loans and commercial and cap rates, and like there's a lot in there that can be intimidating for a listener that's just getting started. So I'm curious those first couple steps, and what that encouragement might be for someone that's trying to learn and trying to just drink from the fire hydrant right now.
Yeah, for me, I would really suggest, like, for me, I'm the type where I just can jump in head first. Like, I'm the type to jump out of the airplane and build my parachute on the way down,
Mm-hmm.
right? I know a lot of farmers are not that way, right? They want to make sure, like, they triple check the parachute before they even jump, right? But for me, I think it's what I'd recommend is just get educated, number one, right? There's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of real estate podcasts, a lot of YouTube channels that you can learn from. But honestly, in all those podcasts and YouTubes, they teach more about the mindset about it, but they don't actually give you the details, right? That's what we want as farmers. We want the devil's in the
Yeah.
details. That's what we want, right? That's what we crave. So because I felt I was lacking in the community, I actually just try to like form little mastermind groups of like-minded individuals, right? So like just remember in pharmacy school we did little like patient workups, and they put us in like teams of like threes or fours. I applied that same concept to real estate, where I was surrounding myself with people who were buying apartment complexes. So it made it seem like it was normal to own an apartment complex. I felt abnormal not owning one. That's how it felt, right? So it's really who you surround yourself with, and then you start to learn from their skills and experience, right? So the way I phrase it is like everyone is maybe one step behind me. Like even though I own 90 units, it's impressive, but like realistically, I'm maybe one step ahead of you. Because I literally just jumped from single family homes to apartments. So you just got to follow in the footsteps of someone else. And that's what we learned in school, right? When you're a P1, you follow the P2, the P2s follow the P3, P4, it's so on. So it's the same model. So just follow somebody that's doing what you want to do and follow their path, right? You're not reinventing the wheel. Like pharmacy, nothing's brand new for the most part. It's pretty much the same. And same with real estate. It hasn't really changed. So just find somebody that you like, that you want to work with, and learn from them, right? But obviously, as a new investor, like let's say you want to work with me, you have to give me value in some way, right? So find ways to give value to people that are doing what you want to do, and then that's how you get into circles, and that's how you network and build a community. So, that's what I would recommend to someone starting off.
That's great advice. That's awesome. In fact, it leads me to our three final infusion questions that I think are you're just brimming with advice, and so I'm really excited to ask you these. This is good stuff, Stephen. The first question in our final infusion is: what's one tangible strategy that you use to make sure that your investing works hand in hand with your career as a pharmacist, especially somebody like yourself, crazy busy pharmacy director? How do you do it?
Yeah, so like I said, I think the skill sets translate very well. So as a pharmacy director, at my biggest hospital, I managed about 40 pharmacists. So you have to kind of leverage and delegate, right? So you're delegating your time out of it. Obviously, I work at least 40 hours a week, and I'm not physically in Oklahoma, so you really have to spend a lot of time vetting your team. And once you built that team, and the number one player in your team is typically your property manager. Once you have that property manager that's strong, they'll find every other player in your team, like the general contractor, insurance agent, title insurance company, all the rest of your team. If you have a strong property manager and interview them and screen them, then everyone else will organically come to you, right? So it's just like when I interview pharmacists for a job. I'm interviewing like 20 of them, and I'll pick the best one. Same thing, property manager. I interview 20 of them. I rank them 1, 2, and 3, just like residency ranking, right? Similar concept. And I make the offer to the first one first. If they don't work out, I have my 2 backups. So, so basically it's building systems, right? Like pharmacists, we're very system and detail oriented. That translates very well to real estate. And you'll be surprised. Like I'm the one lighting the fire under my property manager, say, hey, like you can improve your system by doing this. You'll be more efficient. That's how we're trained in the hospital, right? You have to be very efficient, very timely in terms of drug distribution. So we're constantly tweaking the system to improve it for medication safety. Same thing with real estate. This property manager, how can you be more efficient? You can automate these reports. You can have them automated to me, sent to me via email every month. I can outsource my direct mailing campaign. There's ways to leverage. So I think the key is learning to leverage, learning to delegate, and building systems in a team. If you can do those 3, I know it's hard for some pharmacists, especially the ones that want control. But once you kind of learn that, that's how you scale.
That's great advice. Love it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Those key people in the team, vetting that, spending time on that, super worthwhile. What's one resource that is most helpful to you in your real estate journey, whether it's a book, podcast, person, author, website, whatever that would be?
Yeah, I think, Bigger Pockets was kind of my first podcast that I listened to in terms of real estate. They definitely kind of taught me the mindset, but I think in terms of just learning, YouTube has a lot of valuable information on there that you just can search, like how to underwrite apartment complexes. There's a lot of people who underwrite deals live. Like I underwrite deals live. Like I underwrote at least 100 deals plus for every deal that I got. So I just said, well, instead of, wasting my time doing it alone in the basement, I actually recorded some of the deals where I underwrote it back of the napkin math in like 5 minutes. Like it's not
Nice.
something fast, right? You can do it during your break, if you want, during your 15-minute break or during your lunch. That
Mhm.
I can quickly underwrite deals fast. And once you build those repetitions, just like in pharmacy, like that's how you get really fast at it, to the point where I can look at a deal in Oklahoma City and I know within like a minute if this is even worth underwriting at all. So I just think, for me, I learned by doing. And, I kind of relate it back to like appy rotations. When you're in your fourth year of pharmacy school, what are you doing? You're applying what you learned. So you can learn everything you can the first 3 years, but honestly, we're just trying to pass those exams. That's all. Just circle A, B, and C. And hopefully you circle the right one, right?
I love
Mhm.
it.
But in real life, there's no A, B, and C. It's oh, how can I creatively problem solve this, right? And if you can go through pharmacy school and explain diabetes to a patient, I think you can do real estate and learn that, right? It's not rocket scientists. A lot of people that invest in real estate, they don't have much of an education that we do. We're doctors, so definitely they can do it. We can do it too, and that's just kind of the mindset I always kind of had, right? Like if they can do it, so can I. Like why can't I do that?
Well, that's a perfect lead in then to our third question. If you are talking to a new pharmacist, what is one piece of advice you're giving to that pharmacist as if they're contemplating a start in real estate investing?
Yeah. So the number one issue that all pharmacists suffer is analysis paralysis. I
Mm.
mean, we're definitely guilty of that,
Mhm.
especially with how risk averse we are, how detail oriented we are. We want to feel like we know everything before taking that dive. So I would say just get a baseline knowledge. So know how to underwrite deals, right? Know how to, pick a market, know why. Like I kind of phrase it, pick your unfair advantage,
Mm. Mhm.
right? So where's your unfair advantage? For me, why did I choose Oklahoma? Because I had a really good property manager there, plain
Mm.
and simple. I didn't really know much about, but I had a really good property manager there, and they're my boots on the ground. So because of that, I committed to Oklahoma. So my kind of advice would be just get educated and find your team. Find that key player, which is typically going to be your property manager, and build that trust, right? It's just like asking questions, right? That's what we're great at as pharmacists. We ask questions to get information. And then from that, we process information, ask additional questions. So if you talk to 20, 30 property managers, you're going to learn a lot. And that's what I did. I talked to a bunch of them. That's how I learned about the market and where's a good pocket, where's a bad pocket. I talked to a lot of general contractors to know how to renovate apartment complexes, right? I'm not a general contractor. I'm not even handy at all. I can't even replace my own toilet, right? I can only count in fives, right? I'm a pharmacist. So just talking to them, understanding, like I asked them, how can I be cost effective while getting the most rent, right?
Mm.
So I call it, because that's renter proof. And what's renter proof, right? So, and they'll tell you, okay, this is how you be cheap, make it look nice, but have tenants that like it, and they'll pay you top rent for that. So you ask them,
Mhm.
and
Mm.
they'll tell you, right? Like they're the expert, just like how we're the drug expert.
Yeah.
Doctors come to us for drug advice. I go to the contractor for contracting advice. So it's just really being able to be a student, right? Like in pharmacy school, we're always trained to always be. You never stop learning, right? I graduated 10 years ago. I'm still learning to this day. It
Mhm.
never stops, right? So if you apply that to other facets like real estate, you'll do well. But the key is you have to take action, right? Like knowledge without action is useless.
Mhm.
You can. There's a lot of people in my mastermind group that I started. They were we all started at the same place, and fast forward 5 years, they took no action. They still own no real estate. They don't even own a home that they live in, and I scaled to 90 units just
Yeah.
by taking action. But we all start at the same spot, right? So, and then as you take action, just know that everything that you predicted will probably go wrong. And I've messed up many times too, where I took over an apartment complex. Pest inspection was clean. When I took over, guess what happened? I had a bed bug infestation,
Oh man.
and that cost me $10,000 to fumigate all 20 units. Right? It's terrible, but I bought that apartment complex correct, and I made $200,000 equity day one. So now I made 190,000 equity day one because I spent 10,000.
Yeah.
So you have to have flexibility to know what's going to happen. So have reserves, right? So we're conservative here, so I always make sure I have a lot of liquidity, whether it's line of credits, personal cash, and you want to be very conservative. Assume things are going to take longer and they're going to cost more because most likely that's going to happen. So just having that very conservative approach, which most pharmacists do. So I think we're actually primed because we're very systematic, we're very calculated, and we're very risk adverse. Actually, if you use that, that's not a crutch, that's actually an advantage. But you have to be willing to take action to even utilize our skill set that we have organically.
Yeah, for sure.
I love it. I love how you're the advocate for the pharmacist investor in this, and you're bringing wisdom in behind that to back that. So for people that want to learn more from you, connect with you, where could people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube at Stephen D. Nguyen, or if you look on Instagram or TikTok, it's at Making Multifamily Money. So I actually host a weekly teaching session and followed by a Q&A every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific time. And my goal is just to kind of share my experiences, like kind of what I did today, and kind of teach people and give people an opportunity to do Q&A. It kind of feels like I'm a lecturer all over again. And like I said, it's very organic. I do like teaching, real estate investors. I like teaching pharmacy students, pharmacy residents. So it's a very natural progression to teach people in real estate. So it's just actually very rewarding for me. I kind of joked, we're talking kind of offline before this, that like I never shut up about real estate, and my family is so sick of hearing me talk about it. So I need an outlet to get it out there. So that's why I started these Q&A sessions, and I just kind of wanted to give the information out there and inspire people and just make it know that it is possible, right? It is possible that you can work a full-time W-2 as a pharmacy director, which everyone will say it's very busy, right? And still scale, to 90 units at the same time. So I just kind of want to share my story to make it known that it's possible, and hopefully it inspires others to take action, to say, hey, this guy can do all this. Maybe I can buy my first single family home.
We're really glad you did, Stephen. We appreciate you coming on the show today because it's been an awesome, awesome ride hearing about your journey. And I'm expected to hear a lot more exciting things from you in the future. I'm sure we'll be inviting you back on to share even more down the road.
Yeah. Hopefully when I'm back on, I'll have more units, and maybe my blood pressure will go down a little bit.
Well, again, we appreciate you joining us. It's been awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. If you like what you heard on today's show, please leave us a review and subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. If you have a question, know someone that would make a good guest, or want to connect with Nate or David, head on over to yfprealestate.com and join the growing YFP Real Estate Investing Facebook group. As we conclude this week's episode of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast, an important reminder that the content in this podcast is provided to you for your informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. Information in the podcast and corresponding materials should not be construed as a solicitation or offer to buy or sell any investment or related financial products. We urge listeners to consult with a financial advisor with respect to any investment. Furthermore, the information contained in our archived newsletters, blog posts, and podcasts is not updated and may not be accurate at the time you listen to it on this podcast. Opinions and analyses expressed herein are solely those of your financial pharmacist, unless otherwise noted, and constitute judgments as of the dates published. Such information may contain forward-looking statements which are not intended to be guarantees of future events. Actual results could differ materially from those anticipated in the forward-looking statements. For more information, please visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer. Thank you for your support of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. Have a great rest of your week.